Good morning, everybody. I'm Lisa Shea, and this is my podcast called Unstoppable. I believe that every human is unstoppable, and everybody's got a story, and I believe the stories need to be shared verbally. The wisdom passed to one another is so potent and so powerful. And if there's anything our world needs now, is to know what's possible. So today I have a really special guest. His name is Chris Arnold. He's got just an incredible story. I'm going to let him tell it, but thank you for joining us. Can't wait to hear Chris's story. And please, if you're easily triggered, this is going to contain explicit information like addiction, who knows what, but it may contain triggering information. So please help me welcome Chris as he is due here any minute. Before he pops on, I just want to say, excuse me, I'm like Brad Pitt. I'm channeling Brad Pitt. I'm always eating before these interviews. So what I was going to say is, if you need resources, if you do see this and it triggers something and you feel like you want support, please contact me. Please leave a comment. Please share this information, this content, if it can be inspiring to others. We Phoenix do not get to Phoenix by chance, by accident, or easily, and it is quite extraordinarily challenging to go through. So I share this because I want to be there when somebody reaches out their hand, if they need support, if they need help. So yes, please reach out. Okay, not sure where Chris is. Let's see. Maybe he's not joining today. Maybe something came up. I'm just going to put it on pause. Okay, let's see what to do here. I'm going to stop the call. Okay. Good morning. Hello? There you are. Good morning. Can you hear me? There you are. Is your audio?
Hey.
There you are.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. So you probably want to put your phone, do you want to put your phone on the dash? Or somewhere where we can see it. There it is. We can see you. I think the service is wonky. Yeah, you're paused. Take your time.
You able to see me?
There you are.
Okay.
Fabulous. So you're parked?
No, I'm literally driving to work.
Oh, you're literally driving to work.
Yeah, I gotta get to Greenwich.
Okay.
My day
Right.
didn't, my week. No, it's
Well,
all good.
I really appreciate you doing this today. So I really value your time and your willingness and your humility. Your commitment to yourself is amazing and ultra inspiring. And I said this the first time, you have a story that needs to be told. And I know you've told it before, but I would really love my viewers to be able to hear how you have gone from one way of life to a very, very, very different way of life. And I think a lot of people on the planet are looking for ways to feel inspired, and hearing that they too can recover. So do you want to tell us a little bit about your story? I don't know if you can hear me. Hello?
Can you hear me?
Yeah. Did you hear any of that?
Yeah, no, I heard what you said.
Okay. So I would just encourage you to talk about, if you want to talk about, and please feel free. It's an open door, your open invitation to share whatever's really real for you.
Yeah.
As authentic as you choose to be. I think our listeners will appreciate that.
Yeah. I mean, there's really only one way I ever tell it. And I really kind of like a little bit of the beginning, just to give you a prequel of how I got to where I got, I guess.
Uh-huh.
If that makes sense.
Yes.
So you want me to go?
Sure, please dive right in.
All right. So
I'm chomping at the bit. It's an incredible story.
So my biggest thing is I went to a private middle school because I had like the tendencies of being a wild kid, and my parents thought, well, if there's some structure, maybe it'll slow you down, maybe you'll stop acting out, etc. So that little experiment didn't work, and so I went to Newtown High School, back to public school. Now, when I got to my freshman year, I'd never done a drug before. I'd never drank before. I thought there was something inside of me. I thought I was always going to be famous. I thought I'd be popular and famous because of sports. So I never touched anything. I was very anti-drug, very anti-alcohol. And the biggest reason why I say it like that is because meanwhile I was in 9th grade, my little sister was in 7th grade, and she was already drinking and drugging, partying with guys older than me. And I was getting like very angry and resentful. She'd be sneaking in guys in our basement, 9, 10 o'clock at night, guys older than me. And again, she's 13 years old. I'm not even sure how old you are in 7th grade, but she's sneaking in guys. So I'm getting very resentful, very angry. It's all bothering me. And so my freshman year of high school, her in her 7th grade in middle school, she got a DUI. So she's 3 years away from even being allowed to drive, and she got a DUI. And so my parents sent her to Hazleton because, they're really worried. She's barely 13 years old. Let's nip this in the butt right now, etc. So she went off to Hazleton. I believe it's in Minnesota. And I'm over here, a freshman in high school. And, I really believe like I'm going to be very anti-drug, very anti-alcohol. Like I want my sister to get better. But like I was only fooling myself. It was, not even a few months later, I'm smoking weed every day. I'm drinking alcohol every day. I'm starting to realize that people don't really care if you're good at sports. And like I needed to find that way to be as popular as humanly possible. At least that's what my brain told me. By my sophomore year, OxyContin had really taken over. It just had come out, and it had really taken over, and it got really popular in my town, just like many others. I tried every drug under the sun. The first time I did that drug, I threw up all over this house, but I also couldn't wait to do it again. And so that drug really took over me. Sophomore, junior years were quite a blur. I barely went to school. I did everything for that drug possible. At the time, this is over 20 years ago, Abercrombie and Fitch was like the top clothing line, and I thought to myself, well, I got to get creative. How am I going to make money? I don't have a job. Drugs are really expensive, so I every single day after school, I would rob Abercrombie and Fitch. I started taking orders from kids in school, like, what do you want? What size do you are? What color sweatshirt do you want? And the next day I'd have it in my locker with literally a dude's name on it. And, making a couple of $100 every day from stolen clothes, going immediately to the drug, never even seeing the money basically. And that would go for a little bit until I started getting arrested. Trouble started to happen, consequences started to happen, but consequences never mattered because I would just still do what I wanted. Mm-hmm. But by the time I was a senior in high school, I was absolutely out of control. There was no moderation. There was no care for anything. I mixed and matched everything. I had no idea what I was doing, but I had to try every drug there was. Anytime somebody brought up something I never did, I immediately jumped the gun to do it. Again, barely going to school. I'm not even really sure how I'm graduating each grade, to be honest with you. And it's something that's always kind of boggled my brain. But nonetheless, I stopped at my parents' house in the middle of a school day. And to my surprise, my father was there. And he said, "What are you doing here?" He's like, "Aren't you supposed to be in school?" And I said, "Yeah, but, they let us out early. And I just want to get ready to go to this party tonight." And he's like, "Chris, you always say they let you out early. Everyone's still at school, and that was the last day I ever lived in my parents' house. Me and him got into a very physical fight. Some mean stuff was said, and he kicked me out. And I moved in with a friend of mine who's now 20 years sober. At the time, he was not. And we were reckless together. We were absolutely reckless together. His mother barely spoke English, so there was really no rules at all. I had no idea what she was saying. So how could I be in trouble? And, it kept on spiraling. They're just, for every consequence, there was like a new beginning of getting away with other stuff. And so somehow I graduated high school. Again, I really don't have an idea. I kind of felt like maybe they were just tired of dealing with me. So, let's Chris move forward or something. And so I spoke to my dad in the middle of that summer. It was one of our first conversations. And I said, "Dad, I really want to go to college. I really want to do the next part of my life." And to him, he's like, "Oh, wow, Chris wants to get back on track." But really for me, it was like, that's where everyone goes next, to party, to figure things out, to make friends, to etc. I knew I wasn't a student. I knew I had horrible ADD. I could not get my mind occupied with anything that a teacher was telling me ever. Mm-hmm. So long story short, I got into one college in New Hampshire. I was supposed to be on the baseball team. I got to school a couple days early. I never made it to one baseball practice. Instead, I overdosed at a frat party. Mm-hmm. And ultimately, I ended up joining that frat and kind of just giving up on baseball for good. Mm-hmm. So now I'm in school. Now I'm, 18 years old in New Hampshire, barely know anyone, bringing my horrible addiction with me, and in a fraternity. And there wasn't any structure because I didn't have any kind of a parent anywhere near me. Right. And it was only a time would tell type scenario. I lasted 3 semesters in college before I was kicked out. My GPA was so bad and I was so reckless with drugs that my fraternity kicked me out of the fraternity. And that's pretty hard to do because everyone parties. But my excessiveness and the stuff I was doing was not what they were doing. They're drinking beer and smoking weed, and I'm shooting up in the bathroom of the frat house. Right. And, I'm young. I'm 18 years old. My biggest thing in high school was I didn't care if you knew I did oxys. Like, people thought that was cool, thought it was funny. But like, I really did care when I switched over to the needle and people heard I was doing heroin. Like that, I didn't want anyone to know. That was embarrassing. That's what dudes do under the bridge. That's not what, kids do in Newtown and blah, blah, blah. And like, so I really struggled with that quick switch over that, most heroin oxy addicts have. And it's always the same story, why are you spending so much for the pill?
Right.
Heroin's so much cheaper. What are you thinking? What are you doing? It's all up, where you get with that, you can get hired so much faster, while shooting it. And it's the same story you see in the movie, in the documentary. When you go to a rehab, it's the same thing. Someone leads the way with their great idea for you to try the next way to do it, so it's easier, quicker, cheaper, etc. So I'm an absolute mess. Like I said, I got dismissed from school after 3 semesters. Obviously, my parents aren't thrilled. I have to figure out an option of what I'm going to do. And so I came back to Newtown. It was on a weekend, and I immediately went to a party. And immediately my brain's already like, who am I going to manipulate into being my roommate / maybe my girlfriend / my next step in life? And of course, as a good drug addict that I am, I found the perfect manipulation. And I started talking to a girl, and I was able to get the girl to invite me over. And then, all of a sudden 3 days have gone by and 3 nights. And she's like, so are you ever going to go home? And I was like, no, I really think this is going to work out. Like, maybe we should try dating. And she's like, what? And I'm like, yeah, like, we've had 3 nights, 3 days, 3 sleepovers. Like, we're getting along. Like, your sisters like me. I still haven't met your dad, but like, maybe I could stay here. And so, I mean, not even 5-6 days in, I still haven't met her father, because he works around the clock, who I so much respect for. He had 3 daughters, single father, worked 3 jobs, worked his ass off. Always really, really respected this guy. So she tells me, her name was Amanda, she tells me, listen, my dad's going to be home tonight. I really think you should meet him. You've been living under his roof. And I said, absolutely. Can't wait to shake his hand. And so she tells me he'll be here in 20 minutes. And like a good drug addict that I am, I go to the bathroom, I get my little shot in, got to prepare for the big day. And so I go down and sit in the family room, and I'm waiting for him to come in. And all I remember is him coming in the room. I don't remember anything after that. So all of a sudden, she starts smacking me and throwing water on my face out on her deck. And I said, what happened? And she's like, what happened, Chris? You got up. You guys went to shake each other's hands, and you threw all up over him. And I was like, oh, my God. And she's like, that's the impression you just gave my dad. You threw up on his hand and his arm. She's like, what is wrong with you? Like, are you really this bad of a drug addict? Like, we got to talk about this. And she's like, if you're a drug addict, like, I don't think this is going to work. And I said, you know what, Amanda? I've been thinking about this same problem. I really think if you don't start doing drugs, this isn't going to work. That next hour, she did her first oxy. And I'm not saying this to brag. I'm not saying this to be funny.
It's the insanity. And I'm not laughing at that. I'm laughing with of course. Insanity is brutal to hear.
Exactly. So it was just how crazy I'm at. Instead of being like, oh, I don't want to lose this girl. Like,
right.
I'm brutally honest and saying, listen, we don't got a lot in common yet. Like, if you don't start robbing houses with me and slinging drugs and doing drugs, how's this going to work? And in the next hour, I crushed up her first 80, and it was off to the races. And we were reckless together. Like, I'm talking stay up all night planning on whose houses we're going to rob, how we're going to do it, who's the getaway, who sneaks in the window because she's half my size. Like, I turned a monster out of this girl, poor innocent girl, just like a lot of people are before they get their first taste. And I made a monster. And between me and her, we were out of control. So now
she's still alive.
She is. She's married. She's got kids. She lives in Florida. But now we have this unreal, like, we'll do anything for each other. We'll do whatever it takes to get high next. Like, absolutely out of control. So now I'm 19-ish, maybe almost 20. I'm not even really sure. And I decide that, well, the only real way we'll be able to afford our addiction, and now there's 2 addictions, is if I really get into selling drugs. And that's what I did. So I took over Newtown. I sold weed to support my heroin / oxy addiction because I would go back and forth with which one made more sense to do and which one was dangerous, blah, 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 just like any drug addict. And so, you know, she's kind of covering up my lies. Her sister's like, what's he do for work? And like, she's making up some nonsense because all I'm doing is selling. And I'm selling out of her father's house, which is also not cool. And so for the next year and a half or so, you know, in and out of restaurant jobs, just so I had something to tell people when they'd run into me, you know, Tommy's mom or my best friend buddy from Spaceball. Like, I need to be able to say something as to A, why I'm not in college,
Right.
and B, because you really can't, oh, I sell weed. What do you do? Like, that wasn't okay 20 years ago. So, you know, I have all these little bullshit restaurant jobs that I never cared about. I got fired from all of them, whether it was stealing, credit card fraud, using, etc. And so 2004, I just turned 21. My addiction is heavily going. And I had to go to New Hampshire to re-up, get a couple of pounds of weed, etc. 20 years ago, cell phones aren't that great. 20 years ago, I don't even think texting was invented. 20 years ago, drug addict time was just as unrealistic as it is now. So if I say 2 hours, that could be 9 hours. You just never knew. So I said to Amanda, I'll be back in a couple hours. Couple hours turned into 10, 12, 14 hours. So now she hates me. I'm calling her at 1 a.m. saying, I'm finally headed back. You know, things didn't go to plan. What else is new? And she said, that's great. Go wherever you want, but you can't come here. Problem is, I have thousands of dollars of drugs in the car, thousands of dollars of cash, and I'm fucked up. And there's no one left that's like, oh yeah, let Chris Arnold have a sleepover tonight. Nobody trusted me. So now I'm back in Newtown where I'm heavily known by police. I'm driving around because she won't let me stay with her that night because she's mad at me. And the neighbors were already very suspicious about me. So I certainly wasn't going to chill in my car all night, knowing that the neighbors really weren't thrilled anytime I showed up anywhere. So I'm like, wow, like, what am I going to do? Like, it's 3, 4 a.m, you know, there's, you know, 4 cops out and they know me. What am I going to do? So I end up breaking into my own parents' house so I could get a couple of hours at best of sleep and somewhere where I could hide my stuff and my cash and you know, kind of, you know, hibernate for a little bit. So I'm thinking this is a great plan. No way it could fail, etc. And so I break in, I stick to my plan. I unpack my drugs. I get an hour or 2 of sleep. My plan was to wake up before my father ever did, so I can, you know, maybe swish some mouthwash and get out. Wake up at 6 a.m. Everything's going to plan. I walk upstairs. I go to the kitchen sink, and I pass a gentleman in the hallway of my parents' house at 6 a.m. or 6:30, whatever time it was. And because I'm in a drug addict phase, I don't think too much of it as if I was sober. So I'm like, oh, that's the whatever guy. Like, no big deal. I'll just get out of here. Sure enough, I'm washing my hands. I'm in the kitchen sink, swish my mouth a little bit with some water. I turn around and I get jumped by what I believe was about 8 to 9 state narcotic drug officers, and they tackle me to the floor in my parents' house. I haven't seen my parents in, I don't know, 3-4 years now, something like that. And they tackle me to the kitchen floor, and they start to pick me up. And one of the cops, I'll never forget it, whispers in my ear, "Look what you did, you piece of shit." And he turns me around, and my mother, my little sister, and my father are all cuffed. And again, in true drug addiction form.
Hang on one sec, Chris. I have a question. You,
Yeah.
the sound is wonky because of the service, but it sounds like you said they were cuffed.
Yes.
Your family was in handcuffs?
Yeah, I'm gonna pull over for a little bit for you. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, so all three of them are in handcuffs, and I haven't seen them in quite some time.
Right.
So again, as a drug addict, you know, I feel horrible. My mother's a living saint. My sister is my little sister.
Mhm.
But like, let's wrap this up, boys. Chris has to get high. So 8 or 9 seconds, I felt very low. I felt like maybe even a tear could come out. But then it was like, wait a second, Chris hasn't got high. He woke up this morning. He deserves to get high. So after 2 hours of them destroying my parents' house, not realizing that A, I don't live there, and B, I basically sold almost everything I had on the ride home. So they had to really justify their warrant. And what did they do? Being cops that they are, they did. They got 6 felonies on the arrest. You know, they have obviously, well, not obviously, but they fabricated the police report. They manipulated the newspaper article, etc., to make it a lot worse than what it was. Nonetheless, I got arrested, obviously, and all I could think about is, well, what's my game B plan? Because they just took all my cash, all my drugs. What am I going to do the rest of the day? How am I going to make this work?
Yep.
And so some time went on, and you know, I paid $10,000 for the lawyer that promised me no jail time. And after a few continuances, he said, yeah, you're definitely going to jail. He said, they're going to make an example of you. They want to clean up Newtown. It's getting out of control. They think if the main pot supplier goes to jail, that maybe people will get a little rattled. And I laughed because no one cares. And he said, listen, you know, you're probably going to get 2 years. I might get you down to a year. You probably do about 9 months, blah, blah, blah. So the day of my sentencing, the day I know that I'm actually going to jail, I'm standing in front of the judge. And I always like to tell this part because as a 21-year-old punk drug addict, it's remarkable that it came out of my mouth. And the judge said, she sentenced me, and she said, do you have anything to say before you leave? And I said, I actually do. And to her surprise, because she wasn't expecting that,
Mm-hmm.
I basically said to her, listen, what I'm doing every day, this whole selling weed thing is, it's not to make 100 G's. It's not to pay the mortgage. It's not to do anything right at all. I'm selling weed to support my heroin addiction that eventually will probably kill me. Whether it's now, a couple of years from now, that's what it's going to do.
Mm-hmm.
So instead of me as a 21-year-old kid ruining his life and going to jail right now, how about you send me to a long-term treatment program? And if you really aren't satisfied, let me do a little bit of time after that. This way, my life's not ruined. I'm not going to jail angry, resentful, worried, confused. I've never been there before. All I've heard is bad things. And maybe, just maybe, my life won't go on a bad track if I get a little sobriety in my life. And she kind of did like a quick quiver and was like, you're going to go to jail today. And I went. And instead of, I don't know, learning to do better things and clearing my brain of drugs and all this toxic stuff that I've been doing for now 5-6 years at least,
Mm-hmm.
I went to jail, and that guy is way worse than me. I got high almost every single day. Everyone's manipulating everything. You can't trust anyone. You can't trust the guards. You can't trust the inmates. Everyone's there for themselves. Everyone's just trying to make their day easier. And just like a true drug addict that I am, I found the way to get what I needed. I came up with the lies I needed to make when I called home. Just like anyone would do in my circumstance. You get so creative when you're in such a bad spot as being in jail.
Mm-hmm.
And 9 months later, when I walked out with my little black book with names, addresses, and phone numbers, I started calling those bad dudes I met in jail. And then, just like the movie says, I went to jail selling weed. I came out selling heroin. And now I'm on probation. I have 3 years of probation. That's basically a joke to me. Yeah, I showed up. Yeah, I gave my urines. Once in a while, it was actually mine. because this is what we do. We find ways to lie, cheat, manipulate, and do what we want when we're addicts.
Yep.
So I'm on probation. I violated a few times. He never pressed charges or put me back in jail. He would keep sending me to rehab. I never stayed in any. I got kicked out of all of them. In between all of this, there's absolutely no one on the planet that had any trust in me. So I was basically living out of a hotel in Bridgeport. Some nights I'd have money, some days I wouldn't. It all depends on if I got burned, if somebody robbed me, etc. But this went on for about 2 years. 2007, for the first time in my adult quote unquote life at 24, I actually wanted to get sober for me. I actually wanted to make an opportunity of myself and stop doing what I was doing. And I reached out to my mother on my own will. I was high. I had cash. I had things that in my world I needed. And I'm saying that because it just meant I wasn't going to rob mom's house tonight. And I said, Mom, let me sleep over one night. Let's get a detox on the phone first thing the next morning. I'm kind of done doing this. I'm freezing cold in the middle of winter, living in my car. And what am I doing? I'm 24 years old. I got buddies graduating college and I haven't done a damn thing. And she let me. And I got to the house. I handed her my wallet. I handed her my keys. I handed her my phone. And the next day I was off and I went to detox. And I gave it my first real opportunity. I gave it my first real chance. And from there, I went to my first rehab willingly. And I was able to put together some time. I was able to put some years together. The problem was Chris never went through anything horrible in sobriety yet. And Chris wasn't prepared for what was going to happen. And on my 3-year anniversary to the day, my best friend who was sober, well, but he was in sobriety and he was my roommate. He overdosed and died in our apartment. And I didn't see that coming. He was like a brother to me. He was a great dude. You know him. And I was destroyed. And I didn't know how to grasp that when Chris is sober, bad stuff could happen. I never really thought through enough that, wow, like if I stay sober, probably some stuff's going to happen that I can't get high for. And I didn't know what to do with it. You know, I went to one less meeting. I talked to my sponsor one less day a week. I was pushing back from everything that I was taught to do. And before I knew it, all my surrounding people were starting to relapse. My sponsor gave me a call and was like, listen, you know, I know you look up to me. I know you do this. I know you do that. You know, I know we've been going through the book, but I need to let you know that I end up drinking. He's like, I don't want to make it a reflection of you. Just, I'm not, I guess, as perfect as we thought I was. And so now my sponsor is drinking.
Uh-oh.
You still there? Wow, say
We're
temperature
here.
needs to cool down.
Oh,
Okay.
it's a lot of emotion.
Yeah. So all of a sudden, all the people that are closest to me in the program are now drinking in my living room, and I'm like, what in the world is happening right now? And a good buddy of mine who you also know came by and was like, Chris, you got to get out of here. Like, you're not going to survive. You are not going to last in this condition. Like, this is weird. You went to a meeting with these people last week, and this week you're playing cards, smoking cigarettes, and getting drunk in the kitchen. And I was like, yeah, dude, like, I don't know what this is weird. And so I made the decision that I needed to get a different place. And very, very quickly into doing this, my little sister was killed in a car accident. And I absolutely lost my mind. I was the most overprotective big brother, as close as you could get to your little sister, brother that there was. I mean, there's nothing I wouldn't have done. And the fact that I couldn't save her life and make her safe and make this go away destroyed me. And instead of that little tiny hope and glimpse of staying sober, I didn't give a fuck what was about to happen next. I went so hard after not doing opiates or heroin or oxys in 3 years. I mean, I went so hard so quickly that it honestly made no sense that I didn't have a heart attack or just overdose. because there wasn't any like, oh, like, let me get a couple of bags in. No, it was straight to 10, 20 bags, shut off my phone, threw my keys out the window, and just parked in Waterbury waiting for the end. And for some reason, I mean, there's a lot of reasons, but for some reason, God didn't take me. He was like, nope, this is not how it's going down. I mean, I was there for weeks, and it was unreal. It was really unreal. It was December of 2010, and I came back to my parents' house. That's only 5 weeks after my sisters passed away. And I pulled back into the driveway, and I still remember it's about 5 degrees outside, and I'm washing my car in a freaking wife beater. That's how delusional I am and don't know what the temperature is. And about 10 people pulled up in a couple of cars from AA. And sorry.
It's okay.
And so they're all like bundled up in like scarves and winter hats, and I'm sweating in a tank top. And they're like, do you see the problem here? And I said, what are you talking about? I was washing my car. They're like, we're freezing. Right. You're sweating. Like, what are we doing? And my good bud, Greg, who you know, came up to me and goes, listen, ever since your sister passed away, we've been passing around this special basket at meetings. And we raised about $10,000 for you to go to rehab. You leave tomorrow. And like, I'm getting chills even saying that.
Oh my God. I didn't know that.
And I said, what? And he said, yeah, Chris, like, you have about 35 to 40 people to thank for this. You leave tomorrow. And I mean, I would love to say it's a fairy tale ending. I'd love to say, 5 weeks out of my sister traumatically killed with a lot of background story, but it's not for this. And I'd love to say the fairy tale ends, this fairy tale starts then, but it was just too soon. I had too much emotion. I had too much anger. I went to rehab. Don't get me wrong. There's no way I wasn't going to go. So I went to rehab, and I was there for a month, whatever it was. I took in everything I possibly could, but there was no part of me that was ready to do this. There was no part of me that was like, you know what? I'm ready to get sober. Mm-hmm. And, I came home. I thanked the people that helped me. Within 2-3 weeks, I was getting high. And that's when I went off to start doing the Florida rehab circuit, because Connecticut at this point, I'd probably been about 10 rehabs in Connecticut at that point.
So
Connecticut.
How many rehabs?
I'm sorry?
How many rehabs have you gone through?
I've been through about 14, but I've only been through about 5 that I like from start to finish.
And how many detoxes?
I would say probably about 15 or so. I'm not, probably in the 15-ish range. There's only a few times where I just went to detox and was like, yeah, I got this. Like, I was never that naive. I always at least drove to the next place at the very least. Okay. I never really believed like, oh yeah, if you get 5 days clean, you got it. Like, I don't believe in that at all.
So what finally got you?
So after 3 years of, the next 3 years was a mess. I was about as crazy as I'd ever been. Mm-hmm. And September 17th of 2013, at this point, I had lost my little sister, my best friend, and my mother had finally gotten honest with me and told me she had cancer. And she was terrified to tell me this because she had I was a mama's boy to the fullest. I say it proud. I say it without giving a fuck. I was a mama's boy, and I loved her.
Amen.
So she was like, Chris, you're 30 years old. You're 30 years old. Like, what are we doing? Your little sister's gone. She's like, I don't know how long I have. Like, what you got to make a move. And September of 2013, I was in a rocky relationship, making bad choices again, and I went off to Florida for the 3rd time now. And when I got there, I even said to them, I still remember one of the first groups I went to, I said, I don't care what I got to do. I got to turn this back into 2007 when I put 3 years together. I don't care. I got to copycat it. I got to remember something I heard. There's got to be something that clicks because I can't keep doing this. And I listened to everything I could. I shared whenever I possibly could. Again, not happy because I'm not getting high. Like that's what happiness is, right? Getting high. Well, I had to trick myself. I had to do whatever it took to get through the hump. Sorry. And I made my at the time, my insurance company let me stay for every last dime that they're willing to give me. And I stayed, I think it was like 77 days or something like that. And I stayed every single freaking second because I knew if I go home, there's always a shot. And, Florida was like, that's it. You maxed out and I really know where to go. I didn't have an apartment. I didn't have many clothes. I didn't have much of anything. And I lived on my grandmother's floor, which wasn't okay. It was an elderly place. You're not even allowed to, you could visit, but you couldn't live there. And I lived on her floor and I saved every dollar. And I lived there right till she died. She was 99 years old, 11 months. And I lived there every single second and saved every single quarter and nickel that I possibly could and got on my own feet and slowly started creating my life again at 30 years old as a 30-year-old child, more or less. And I did whatever it possibly could. And 13 months later, I watched my mother pass away. And she would not die until I promised her that I would stay focused. She said, all you have left is your father. You and your father haven't had a relationship in almost 20 years. Now's the opportunity. You all have each other. Like, you both need to forgive each other. Like, you can't go back in time. You can't change anything you did. You can't do anything about that. But you're the only two you have left. Everyone's gone. And at 32 years old, after losing more or less everyone that I ever cared about, I had to make a decision. And me and my dad are friends till today. I will spend a little bit of Christmas with him. It's the past 8 years now, 8 years sober, 8 years clean. So much has gotten better. And it's not just the material things. I don't wake up absolutely handicapped by what I used to do. I don't wake up and remotely think about if I'm getting high today. I don't do anything that I used to do. I don't set my alarm for, the methadone clinic. I don't do any of the things that I've had to do forever. And, for the first few years, I was gung-ho with AA. I had a great sponsor. I went to a gazillion meetings. I did everything I possibly could to grasp sobriety every single day, all day long, And as you get older and as things grow and I have my own business, it's not an excuse to go to them less. But luckily I have a lot of positive things going on in my life. I go to the gym for a lot of my therapy type stuff. It gets a lot of my frustration out. It gets a lot of my head cleared when it needs to be cleared. But meetings are still very important. Like, you still have to remember how you got here. And I don't forget that at all. I wouldn't have a damn thing if I didn't stick to AA and do the stuff that was important to me. I'm on the other side of things. A lot of people, if they get a grasp of my story, which I very rarely put out there, but if they, how are you not drinking? How are you not upset? How do you not hate God? How do you go on? Da, 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 da. And the biggest thing I look at is my sister never saw me sober. My mother only saw me a year sober. None of them ever saw me be successful. And if I believe that I can be happy that they're looking at me and saying, oh my God, like if my mom and my sister even were dropped down from heaven in here in front of me for 10 seconds, they both be crying hysterically in joy because they're like, there is no way with what you were doing. How do you have your business? How do you have a place? How do people trust you? How do, like this is so surreal. Everything that's happened compared to all the things I cared about, which wasn't much, to where I am today. And I rather them be proud of me than be sulking and looking for pity and pitying myself for that matter, going nowhere. because they're not going to come back. I can't bring them back, but I can at least make them proud of me. And that's really important to me. That's something that really matters to me, because I want them to be proud of me. I want people that know me and people that saw my previous life to see my life now to continue to have that shock. Because when I do see people from the former life or from when I was a mess that only hadn't seen me since then, like that is such always a great thrill, because it's like, yeah, was I supposed to be another Newtown statistic? I probably was. I'm not. I'm on the other side of that. Would it made a lot of sense to a lot of people if I died? Absolutely. Chris Arnold, oh yeah, he died. Yeah, that would have made a lot of sense to a lot, even to myself. Of course. How would I have lived? But I'm here. You know, I've gotten a lot of good things in sobriety. I've spoke at dozens of high schools, and that's still probably one of my favorite things to do, you know, because we only got one shot. As far as I know, we have one shot here, and I'm not ready to go. I'm just not. So
are you proud of yourself?
I am proud of myself. I'm definitely proud of myself. You know, again, it was never my goal. 10 years ago, if you asked me what my goal was, I don't even think I had one, you know, and 10 years later, I'm going to be 39 in 2 months, you know, for all of my 30s, I've been sober, which is a pretty cool thing to say out loud. A lot of the worst things in my life have happened in my 30s, and I'm still sober though. And instead of making everything the end of the world and going the opposite way with any hardships, I just battle right through them and know that if I don't get high, I got way more opportunities than if I do.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. My question is, I have so many questions, but for the sake of time, what's the biggest lesson you've learned? What has your life lesson been?
wow. Honestly, I think no matter how bad you were, no matter how much you did wrong, the worst of the worst things, like there's always another side to it. You know, drugs and alcohol and everything we get addicted to can make us do the worst stuff on the planet. But if we keep applying ourselves and you believe in yourself and you know that there's another true part of you,
right,
that like you can overachieve it. You know, the big, like all these people could be like, no, you're still Chris from the old, like you don't change. There's so many people that could point that, and I don't have any of that. Right. You know, people let me in their homes to do work. You know, I used to go in people's homes to steal their stuff. So like, you know, the endless amounts of possibility, that's honestly one of the biggest things that blows my mind. Because if you took my old resume and you match it to my new, you're not letting me in your house.
Right. You're the true definition of a phoenix and her fireweed. You know, we burn ourselves up and we fly away in our own ashes through the pain. You know, that fire of transmutation, it's a powerful story.
Yeah.
You know, like really, really powerful. So what would you say to anybody, if there was anybody young or struggling listening to you today, what would you tell them?
I mean, it's cliche, but I'd say it all the time. Like fast forward the tape. You know, do you want to be doing what I'm doing 10 years from now, talking to kids like just like you that had all the opportunities in the world? Do you want to waste those 10 years or do you want to maximize them? Because if I could have done what I'm doing now in my early 20s, I mean, I don't even know where I'd be now. You know, all it's doing is prolonging the inevitable. You're either going to die, you're going to go to jail.
Right.
There's not tons of options here. So if you're already lost in this big party world at a young age, which I totally get and I totally identify, you got very little responsibilities, might as well get high with your buddies. But if you can get past that at an early age, wow, the things that you can do. Right.
The overriding thing too is it seems as if you know, I know that there was such a huge acceptance when I started drinking. It was because there's such a cool factor to drinking and drugging. And it's not cool. It's cool to be ourselves.
Right.
You know, it's not cool. It's not cool. What's cool is where and who you are now. That's cool.
Yeah.
Super cool. Super powerful story, Chris. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any last words that you want to share with our viewers?
Um,
Anything you want to say?
I think just the moral for my story is no matter what horrible thing you think you're going through, no matter how hard you think it is compared to maybe somebody else's hardest thing, like you can stay sober through it. If you actually give yourself a fighting chance and you got good
Yeah.
people around you,
Yes. Yes. Yes.
and luckily I can do that and stick through, because after my best friend and my little sister passed away and I chose to go the other way with it, there wasn't any knowing I'd get back from it, you know? And now, and it made the same thing with good stuff. Like, to get through good stuff sober is great as well. But for me, it was always, when bad stuff happened, Chris deserves to get high. I deserve it. Like, that's God's given me a reason to get high. No, like,
learn other ways.
There's so many other ways, and if you can trick your brain long enough to keep sobriety, whatever it takes.
So much hope. Whew. All right, dear. Well, this video is in memory of your sister and Pete.
Yeah.
And your mom.
Yeah.
If it's okay with you, I'd like to dedicate it to them.
I would love that.
Great. All right, my dear. I will talk to you soon. Thank you so much for your time and really sharing who you are today. Thank you.
Thank you.
You have so much to offer. I know why you're here. You have massive purpose, massive impact on the people around you. Massive. So I'm happy I know you.
Thank you. I'm happy I know you too.
All right. I'll talk to you soon. Bye.
All right. Bye now.
So that's Chris. The beauty of Chris.